Chapter 3. Arriving at Unsibal on a rainy night, Yantif was reminded of a paragraph in the Alastor Gazetteer. Across many years, wise travelers have learned to discount their first impressions of a new environment. Such judgments are derived from previous experience in previous places, and are infallibly distorted. On this dismal evening, Unsibal spaceport lacked every quaint or charming quality, and Yantif wondered why a system which for a century had gratified uncounted Arabians could not better promote the comfort of a relatively few visitors. 250 passengers, debarking from the spaceships, found themselves alone in the gloom, a quarter mile from the line of low blue lights which presumably marked the terminal building. Muttering and grumbling, the passengers squelched off through the puddles. Yantif walked to the side of the straggling troop, thrilling to contact with alien soil. From the direction of Unsibal drifted a waft of odor, oddly sour and heavy, yet half familiar, which only served to emphasize the strangeness of the world Wyst. At the terminal, a droning voice addressed the newcomers. "Welcome to Erebus. We distinguish 3 types of visitors. First, commercial representatives and tourists intending brief visits. Second, persons planning sojourns of less than a year. Third, immigrants. Please form orderly queues at the designated doorways. Attention! The import of foodstuffs is prohibited. All such items must be surrendered to the contraband property desk. Welcome to Erebus. We distinguish 3 types of visitors." Yantif pushed through the crowds. Apparently several hundred arrivals from a previous ship still waited in the reception hall. Eventually he discovered the file marked 2, which snaked back and forth across the room in a most confusing manner, and took his place in line. Most arriving persons, he noted, intended immigration, and the queue in file 3 stretched several times as far as that in file 2. The queue in file 1 was very short indeed. Step by sidling step, Yantif crossed the room. At the far end, an array of 8 wickets controlled the movement of the new arrivals, but only 2 of these wickets were in operation. A corpulent man, immediately behind Yantif, thought to hasten the motion of the line by standing close to Yantif and pressing with his belly. When Yantif, to avoid the contact, moved as close as convenient to the person ahead, the corpulent man promptly inched forward to squeeze Yantif even more closely. The man ahead at last looked around at Yantif and said in a cold voice, "Really, sir, I'm as anxious as you to negotiate this file. No matter how you press, the line moves no faster." Yantif could offer no explanation which would not offend the corpulent man, who now stood so close that his breath warmed Yantif's cheek. Finally, when the man ahead stepped forward, Yantif resolutely held his ground, despite the fat man's breathing and jostling. Ultimately, Yantif arrived at the wicket, where he presented his landing pass. The clerk, a young woman with extravagant puffs of blonde hair over her ear, thrust it aside. "That's not correct. Where is your green clearance card?" Yantif fumbled through his pockets. "I don't seem to have any green card. They gave me no such document." "Sir, you'll have to go back to the ship for your green clearance card." Yantif chanced to notice that the fat man carried a white card similar to his own. In desperation, he said, "This man has no green card either." "That's a matter of no relevance. I can't allow you entry unless you present the proper documentation." "This was all they gave me. Surely it's sufficient." "Sir, please. You're obstructing the line." In numb dismay, Yantif stared at his white card. "It says here landing pass and clearance card." The clerk looked at it sidelong and made a clicking sound with her tongue. She went to the second booth and conferred with the clerk, who made a telephone call. The blonde girl returned to the wicket. "This is a new form. It was introduced only last month. I haven't drudged this office for a year, and I've been sending everyone back to the ship. Your questionnaire, please, on, the blue sheet." Yantif produced the proper document, an intricate form which he had painstakingly completed. Yantif Ravensrock, Freyness, Onzek, occupation technical graphics expert. Reason for visit? Curiosity. She glanced at him with raised eyebrows. Curiosity about what? Yantif hurriedly said, I want to study the Araban social system. Then you should have written study. I'll change it. No, you can't alter the document. You'll have to fill out a new form. Somewhere in the outer chambers you'll find blank forms in a desk. At least that's how it went a year ago. Wait, cried Yantif. After curiosity, I'll write about Araban social system. There's plenty of room, and that's not alteration. Very well. It's not regular, of course. Yantif quickly made the entry, and the clerk reached for the validation stamp. A gong sounded. She dropped the stamp, rose to her feet, and went to the back of the wicket, where she tossed a cape around her shoulders. A young man entered the wicket, round-faced, boyish, his eyelids drooping as if from lack of sleep. Here I am, he told the blonde girl. A trifle late, but that's not too bad. I've only just returned from a swill at Circe and directly to Drudge. Still, I might be as well to recover from Drudge. Come to think, it's the best way. Lucky you, I'm low tomorrow. I'll probably be drawing sanitation or greasing the rollers. I drew a shoe machine last week. It's really rather amusing once you learn which handles to pull. Halfway through my stint, the circuits went wrong and the shoes all came out with funny big toes. I sent them on anyway, in hopes of launching a new style. Think of it. Maybe I'll be famous. Small chance. Who wants to wear funny shoes with big toes? Somebody'd better want to wear them. They've gone into boxes. The fat man called over Yantif's shoulder. Can't we hurry things a bit? Everyone's anxious to rest and have a bite of food. The two clerks turned him identical stares of blank incomprehension. The girl picked up her handbag. Off to bed for me. I'm too tired even to copulate. I know those days. Well, I suppose I'd better be off earning my gruff. He stepped forward and picked up Yantif's papers. Now then, let's see. First, I'll need your green entry card. I don't have a green entry card. No green card? Then, my friend, you'd better get one. I know that much, at least. Just run back to the ship and locate the purser. He'll fix you up in a jiffy. The white card supersedes the green card. Oh, is that how they do it now? Oh, good enough then. So now, what else? The blue questionnaire. I won't bother with that. It's boring for both of us. You'll want a housing assignment. Do you have any preferences? Not really. What do you suggest? Unsabal, of course. Here's a decent location. He gave Yantif a metal disc. Go to block 17-882 and show this disc to the floor clerk. He lifted the stamp and gave Yantif's papers a resounding blow. There you are, my friend. I wish you the enjoyment of your bed, the digestion of your gruff, and lucky draws from the drudge barrel. Thank you. Can I spend the night in the hotel, or must I go to block 17, whatever it is? The Traveler's Inn, by all means. You've got the ozels. The manways are wet tonight. It's no time to be seeking out a block. The Traveler's Inn, an ancient bulk with a dozen wings and annexes, stood directly opposite the terminal exit. Yantif entered the lobby and applied at the desk for a chamber. The clerk handed him a key. That'll be 7 ozels, sir. Yantif leaned back, aghast. 7 ozels? For one room with one bed for a single night? Correct, sir. Yantif reluctantly paid over the money. When he saw the chamber, he became more indignant than ever. In Fraynus, such a room would be considered minimal, and rent for an ozel or less. Returning downstairs to the restaurant, Yantif seated himself at one of the enameled concrete counters. An attendant placed a covered tray in front of him. Not so fast, said Yantif. Let me look at the menu. No menu here, my friend. It's gruff and deedle with a bit of wobbly to fill in the chinks. We all eat alike. Yantif lifted the cover from the tray. He found 4 cakes of baked brown dough, a mug of white liquid, and a bowl of yellow paste. Yantif tasted the gruff. The flavor was mild and not unpleasant. The deedle was tart and faintly astringent, while the wobbly seemed a simple custard. Yanti finished his meal, and the attendant gave him a slip of paper. "Please pay at the main desk." Yantif glanced at the slip in wonder. 2 ozels! Can this price be correct? "The price may not be correct," said the attendant. "Still, it's the price we exact here at the Traveller's Inn." A cavernous bathroom was shared by both sexes, personal modesty having succumbed to egoism. Yantif diffidently made use of one of the facilities, wondering what his mother would say, then thankfully retired to his chamber. In the morning, after Wyst's short night, Yantif rose from his bed to find Dwan already halfway up the sky. Yantif looked out across the city in great interest, studying the play of light among the blocks and along the manways. Each of the blocks showed a different color, and possibly because Yantif was bringing to bear an expectant vision, the colors seemed peculiarly rich and clean, as if they had just been washed. Yantif dressed and, descending to the ground floor, took advice from the desk clerk as to the location of block 17-882. Giving the restaurant and its 2-ozel breakfast a wide berth, Yantif sent along the main hallway. A sliding surface thronged with Arabians, rapid toward the center, slow at the edges. Dwan light illuminated the cityscape to either side in a manner Yantif found entrancing, and his spirits rose. The manway curved westward. The blocks in lines to right and left marched away to the horizon, dwindling to points. Laterals poured human streams upon the manway. Yantif had never imagined such vast crowds, a marvelous spectacle in itself. The city Unsibal must be reckoned one of the wonders of the Gaian universe. Across his course at right angles slid another of the mighty Araban man-rivers, a pair of boulevards flowing in opposite directions. Yantif glimpsed rank behind rank of men and women riding with faces curiously serene. The manway swerved and joined another, larger manway. Yantif began to watch the overhanging signs which gave warning of lead-offs. He diverted to a slow neighborhood feeder and presently stepped off in front of the weathered pink block, 200 feet square and 23 stories high. Block 17-882, his designated home. Yantif paused to inspect the face of the structure. The surface paint, peeling off in areas, showed blotches of pink, old rose, and pale pink, which gave the blocks a raffish and restless air, in contrast to its neighbor, which was painted a supercilious blue. Yantif found the color congenial and congratulated himself on the lucky chance of his allotment. Like all the other blocks, the walls showed no windows, nor any openings except for the entrance. Over the parapet surrounding the roof hung foliage from the roof garden. Constant traffic passed in and out of the portal, men, women, and a few children in identical garments of colors somewhat too garish for Yantif's taste, as if the folk were dressed for a carnival. Their faces, likewise, were gay. They laughed and chattered and walked jauntily. Yantif's spirits rose to look at them, and his misgivings began to dwindle. Yantif passed into the lobby and approached the desk. He presented his requisition to the clerk, a short, round-bodied man with gingery hair arranged in ear puffs and elaborate love locks. The round, cheerful face instantly became petulant.
"My aching bowels. Is it yet another immigrant?"
"No, indeed," said Yantif with dignity. "I'm a visitor."
"What's the odds? You're one more cup of water in the full bucket. Why don't you start an egoism society on your own world?"
Yantif replied politely. "People aren't so inclined on Zek."
"Neither Zek nor the whole elitist cove. We can't absorb their ne'er-do-wells indefinitely. Our machines break down. So what happens when the strange slop stops and there's no more wump? We'll all go hungry together."
Yantif's jaw dropped. "Are there really that many immigrants?"
"Too true. 1,000 each and every week."
"But surely some of them leave."
"Not enough. Only 600 or hopefully 7. Still, hope won't mend machines."
He handed Yantif a key.
"Your roommate will show you the wumper and explain the rules. You'll receive a drudge schedule this afternoon."
Yantif said tentatively, "I'd prefer a single apartment if any are available."
"You've got a single apartment," said the clerk. "It comes with 2 beds. If the population rises another billion, we'll put in hammocks. Floor 19, apartment D18. I'll call up the mention that you're coming."
The ascensor conveyed Yantif to the 19th floor. He found corridor D and presently arrived at apartment 18. He hesitated, raised his hand to knock, then decided that, under the circumstances, he was entitled to effect his own entry. Accordingly, he touched his key to the latch plate. The door slid aside to reveal a sitting room furnished with a pair of low couches, a table, a set of cases, and a wall screen. A patterned beige and black rug covered the floor. From the ceiling hung a dozen globes fashioned from wire and colored paper. On one of the couches sat a man and a woman, both considerably older than Yantif. Yantif stepped forward, feeling a trifle sheepish. "I'm Yantif Ravensrock, and I've been assigned to this apartment." The man and the woman showed gracious smiles and jumped smartly to their feet. Later, when Yantif recalled his sojourn at Unsabal, he never failed to reflect upon the careful etiquette by which the Arabians eased the circumstances of their lives. The man was tall and elegant, with a fine straight nose and flashing eyes. He wore his black hair in glossy ear puffs, with artful cusps down the forehead. Of the two, he seemed the more forthright. He gave Yantif a friendly salute, which conveyed nothing of the desk clerk's disapproval.
"Welcome to Erebus, Yantif. Welcome to Old Pink, and to this excellent apartment."
"Thank you very much," said Yantif. This affable and intelligent man was evidently to be his roommate, and Yantif's misgivings dissolved.
"Allow me to perform the introduction. This lady is the miraculous Scarlet, a person of charm and capability, and I am Esteban."
Scarlet spoke in a quick, husky voice.
"You seem clean and quiet. I'm sure that we'll have no difficulties. Please don't whistle in the apartment, or inquire the purpose of my work more than once, or belch loudly. I can't abide a belching man."
With an effort, Yantif maintained his sang-froid. Here was a situation which he had not anticipated. With desperate facility, he said, "I'll keep your remarks very much in mind." He surveyed Scarlet from the corner of his eye. An introverted woman, he thought, perhaps a bit tense. She stood almost as tall as he was, with rather heavy arms and legs. Her face was pale and round. Her features were unremarkable except for the eyes, glowing under strong black eyebrows. She wore her ear-puffs small, with black curls piled in a heap above. A woman neither comely nor yet repulsive. She might not be so easy a roommate as Esteban, however. He said, "I hope you won't find me too difficult."
"I'm sure not. You seem a nice lad. Esteban, borrow 3 mugs from the Wumper. I'll pour out a taste of swill, to mark the occasion. You brought in a pack or 2 of Bonter or so, I hope."
"Sorry," said Yantif. "The idea never occurred to me." Esteban went off on his errand. Scarlet rummaged under the case and brought out a jug.
"Please don't think me non-mutual. I just can't believe that an occasional jug of swill will destroy Erebus. You're sure there's not even a trace of Bonter in your luggage?"
"I don't carry any luggage, only this handbag."
"Pity. There's nothing like pickles and pepper sausage to advance the swill. While we're waiting, I'll show you your bed."
Yantif followed her into a small square chamber furnished with 2 wardrobes, 2 cases, a table, now cluttered with Scarlet's small belongings, and 2 cots separated by a flimsy curtain. Scarlet brushed the trinkets to one side of the table.
"Your half," she said, "and your bed."
She jerked her thumb.
"During my drudge, the apartment is at your disposal, should you wish to entertain a friend, and vice versa. Things work out well unless we draw the same stint, but that's not too often."
Yes, I see," said Yantif. Esteban returned with 3 blue glass mugs. Scarlet solemnly poured them full.
"To the centenary,"
she called in a brassy voice.
"May the Comnac do his duty."
Yantif drank down the murky liquid and controlled a grimace at the aftertaste, which he associated with mice and old mattresses.
Very bold, said Esteban approvingly. Very bold indeed. You have an active thumb for the swill? Yes, very good, said Yantif. And when does the centenary occur? Shortly, a matter of a few months. There's to be a simply explosive festival with free games and dancing along the ways, and perhaps no end of swill. I'll surely put down a good supply. Can't you scrounge me a dozen jugs?
My dear, I've drawn the vitamin stint only once, and the mutual stood right on top of me, watching my every move. I was lucky to capture the two of them. We must do without the swill.
Can't you use a plastic bag? Yantif suggested. After all, the container need not be rigid.
Esteban ruefully shook his head. It's been tried many times. Our plastic bags all leak.
Scorlet said, Old Scarp has a jug which he's too parsimonious to use. I'll have Cadida put the snurg on it. That's 3 jugs at least. Now, where's the gruff?
I'll contribute from lunch, said Esteban.
If it's needed, said Yantif, I will too. Scorlet looked at him approvingly.
That's the spirit. Who said the immigrants are lampreys sucking at our juices? Not the case with Yantif.
Esteban said meditatively,
I know a chap in Purple Vendetta who taps sturge from the pipe, and he makes a very fierce swill indeed. I might just promote a bucket or 2 of raw sturge. It's worth the experiment.
Yantif asked, What is sturge?
Simple food pulp. It's piped out from the central plant. In the kitchen it magically becomes gruff, deedle, and wobbly. No reason why it shouldn't make good swill.
Scorlet carefully poured each of the 3 mugs half full.
Well, once again to the festival. And may the Konatic put all would-be immigrants to work making pickles and pepper sausage for consignment to Unsibal.
And let the propunctures gnaw last week's gruff.
Save some for the Konatic. He can be as eagle as the rest of us.
Oh, he'll dine on Bonter at the Traveller's Inn, no fear of that.
Yantif asked, Is the Konatic actually coming to the festival? Scorlet shrugged.
The Whispers are going out to Luz to invite him, but who knows what he'll say.
He won't come, said Esteban. Total fool he'll feel at the ceremony with everybody screaming hurrah for eagleism, and eagleism for the cluster. And low drudge for the Konatic, just like the rest of us.
Exactly, what could he say?
Oh, something like, My dear subjects, I'm disappointed that you haven't laid red velvet along Unsibal River for my delicate feet. Now, it's not well known, and I'd never reveal it anywhere but here on Erebus, but I'm actually a twig. I command that you fill me a tank with your best Bonter.
Half amused, half scandalized, Yantif protested, Really? You do him an injustice. He lives a most sedate life. Scorlet sneered.
That's all smarm from his Bureau of Acclamation. Who knows what the Konatic's really like?
Esteban drained his blue glass mug and looked in calculation towards the jug.
We all know that the Konatic often disappears from Luz. Now, I've heard, this is admittedly rumor, but where there's smoke, there's fire, that during these exact intervals, and only during these intervals, Bosco Boskowitz makes his depredations. This correspondence has been thoroughly researched, so I've heard, and there's no doubt about it.
Interesting, said Scorlet. Doesn't Bosco Boskowitz maintain a secret palace among the Starments, staffed only with beautiful children who must obey his every whim?
That's the case, and isn't it odd that the Whelm never interferes with Bosco Boskowitz?
More than odd. That's why I say, eagleism across the cluster.
Yantif said in disgust, I don't believe a word of it. Scorlet laughed her gloomy laugh.
You're young and naive.
As to that, I can't say.
No matter.
Scorlet peered into the jug.
I suppose we might as well put a term to it.
Excellent idea, declared Esteban. The strength is always at the bottom of the jug.
Scorlet raised her head.
No time now. There goes the gong. Let's go for Wump. Then afterwards, why not conduct our new friend across the city?
Certainly, I'm always ready for a promenade. It's a fine day after the rain. And What of Tanzel? We could pick her up along the way.
Yes, of course. Poor little dear. I haven't seen her for days. I'll call her right now.
She went to the screen, but pushed buttons in vain.
It still won't go, idiotic thing. There's been maintenance on it twice.
Yantif went to the screen, touched the buttons, listened. He slipped up the retainer ring and lowered the screen upon its hinge. Scorlet and Esteban came to look over his shoulder.
Do you understand these things?
Not really. As children, we're trained in elementary circuitry, but I haven't gone much further. Still, this is very simple equipment, all plugins, and the telltale shows where they're bad. Well, they're all in order. Look here. This filter bank isn't slotted accurately. Try now. The screen glowed.
Scorlet said bitterly, "The maintenance fellow studied his instruction book for 2 hours and still couldn't do the job."
Oh, well, said Esteban, he was just someone like me on high drudge.
Scorlet merely gave a sour grunt. She touched the buttons and spoke to the woman whose face appeared.
"Tanzel, please."
A girl 9 or 10 years old looked forth from the screens.
"Hello, Mother. Hello, Father. We're dropping by in about an hour, and we'll go for a nice promenade. Will you be ready?" "Oh, yes, I'll wait in the front." "Good, in just about an hour."
The three turned to go. Yantif stopped short. "I'll just put my bag in the wardrobe. No harm starting out tidy, at least." Esteban clapped Yantif on the shoulder.
"I think you've got a jewel here, Scarlet."
"Oh, I suppose he'll do."
As they walked along the corridor, Yantif asked, "What happened to your last roommate?"
"I don't know," said Scorlet. "She went out one day and never came back."
"How strange."
"I suppose so. No one ever knows what's in another person's mind. Here's the Wumper."
The three entered a long, wide room lined with tables and benches, and already filled with chattering residents of level 19. An attendant punched their apartment numbers into a register. The three took covered trays from a dispenser and went to the table. The tray contained exactly the same rations Yantif had been served the previous evening at the Traveller's Inn. Scorlet put a cake of gruff to the side.
"For our next swill."
Esteban, with an expression of whimsical grief, did likewise.
"For swill, any sacrifice is worthy."
"Here's mine," said Yantif. "I insist on contributing." Scorlet gathered the 3 cakes together.
"I'll take them back to the apartment and we'll just pretend that we've eaten them."
Esteban jumped to his feet.
"A good idea, but let me. I'll be glad to run the errand."
"Don't be silly," said Scorlet. "It's only a step or two."
Esteban said, laughing.
"Well, we'll both go if you're so stubborn."
Yantif looked from one to the other, bemused. "Is it really such a point of courtesy? I'll come too in that case." Esteban sighed and shook his head.
"Of course not. Scarlet is merely a wayward person. None of us will go."
Scorlet shrugged.
"As you wish."
Yantif said, "We can easily restrain our appetites. At least I can, and we'll drop off the gruff on our way out."
"Of course," said Esteban. "That's the fair way."
Yantif wondered at the exquisite nicety of Esteban's politeness.
"Eat the wump and shut up," said Scorlet.
The meal was taken in silence. Yantif inspected his fellow residents with interest. There was no reserve and anonymity. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. Cheerful greetings, banter, allusions to social events and mutual friends rang out across the room. A slender girl with fine honey-colored hair paused beside Scorlet and whispered something in her ear, with an arch, slide glance towards Yantif. Scorlet gave a dreary laugh.
"Go on with you. It's all nonsense, as well you know."
The girl went on to a nearby table where she joined friends. Yantif thought her slender, round body, her charming features, and her saucy spontaneity all attractive, but made no comment. Scorlet noticed the direction of his gaze.
"That's Kadida. The old sandpiper yonder is Sarp, her roommate. He tries to copulate 12 times a day, which makes for an inconvenient roommate. After all, one's social life is usually elsewhere. She's just offered to trade you for Sarp, but I wouldn't hear of it. Esteban is always handy when I'm in the mood, which perhaps isn't as often as it should be.
Yantif, spooning up his wobbly, forebode comment. Upon leaving the refectory, the three stopped by the apartment where Scorlet dropped off the 3 cakes of gruff. Scorlet turned to Yantif.
Are you ready?
I'm just debating whether to bring my camera. My family wants photographs by the dozen.
Better not this time, said Esteban. Wait till you know the ropes. Then you can get some really dramatic photographs. And also, you'll have learned to cope with the, alas, all too prevalent snurgery.
Snurgery? What's that?
Theft, to put it bluntly. Erebus abounds with snurgers. Haven't you heard?
Yantif shook his head.
I can't understand why anyone would steal under egoism.
Esteban laughed.
Snurging ensues egoism. It's a very direct remedy against anyone accumulating goods. In Erebus, we share and share alike.
I can't understand the logic in all this, said Yantif,
but neither Esteban nor Scorlet showed any interest in perusing the topic. The 3 proceeded to the manway and rode half a mile to the district creche, where Tanzel waited, a pretty wisp of a girl with Scorlet's round face, Esteban's fine features, and a thoughtful intelligence all her own. She greeted Scorlet and Esteban with restrained affection, and Yantif with quite obvious curiosity. After a few moments of covert inspection, she told him,
Really? You look much like the rest of us.
Of course, how did you expect me to look?
Like a cannibal, or an exploiter, or maybe one of their victims.
What odd ideas, said Yantif. On Zek, at least, no one would care to be thought of as an exploiter, much less a victim.
Then why did you come to Erebus?
That's a hard question, said Yantif somberly. I'm not sure I know the answer myself. At home, too much pressed on me, while all the time I searched for something I couldn't find. I needed to get away and order my mind.
Esteban and Scorlet had been listening to the conversation with distant half-smiles. Esteban inquired in a light voice,
And then, when your mind has been ordered?
This is what I don't know. In essence, I want to create something remarkable and beautiful, something that is my very own. I want to indicate the mysteries of life. I don't hope to explain them, mind you. I wouldn't even if I could. I want to reveal their dimensions and their wonder for people who are interested, or even people who aren't. I'm afraid I don't explain myself very well.
Scorlet said in a rather cool voice,
You explain well enough, but no one quite understands.
Tanzel, listening with knitted eyebrow, said,
I understand a little of what he's saying. I wonder about these mysteries, too. For instance, why am I me and not somebody else?
Scorlet said roughly,
You'll wear your brain out thinking along those lines.
Esteban told her earnestly,
Remember, my dear, that Yantif isn't an egoist like the rest of us. He wants to do something quite extraordinary and individualistic.
Yes, partly that, said Yantif, wishing that he had never ventured an opinion. But it's more than that. It's more like this. Here I am, born into life with certain capabilities. If I don't use those capabilities and achieve my utmost, then I'm cheating myself and living a soiled life.
Said Tanzel sagely. If everyone like you were like you, the world would be a very nervous place.
Yantif gave an embarrassed laugh.
It's no cause for worry. There don't seem to be many people like me.
Tanzel gave her shoulders a jerk of somber disinterest, and Yantif was pleased to drop the subject. A moment later her mood changed. She tugged at Yantif's sleeve and pointed ahead.
There's Unsabal River. I do so love watching from the bridge. Oh, please come, everyone, over to the deck.
Tanzel ran out upon the prospect deck. The others followed more sedately, and all stood leaning on the rail as Unsabal River passed below, a pair of slideways, each 100 feet wide, crowded close with the folk of Erebus. Tanzel told Yantif excitedly,
If you stand long enough, you'll see everyone in the world.
That, of course, isn't true,
said Scorlet crisply, as if she did not altogether approve of Tanzel's fancies. Below passed the Arabans, Folk of all ages, faces serene and easy, as if they walked alone, wrapped in contemplation. Occasionally someone might raise his eyes to look at the line of faces along the deck. For the most part the crowds passed below, oblivious to those who watched from above. Esteban began to show signs of restlessness. He straightened, slapped the rails, and with a thoughtful glance toward the sky said,
"Perhaps I'd better be moving along. My friend Hester will be expecting me."
Scorlet's black eyes glittered.
There's no need whatever for you to rush off.
"Well, in a way."
Which route do you go?
Oh, just along the river.
We'll all go together and take you to Hester's block. She's at the Tesseract, I believe.
Dignity struggled with annoyance. Esteban said curtly,
"Shall we move along then?"
A ramp curved down and around to the boarding platform. They stepped out into the crowd and were carried away to the west. As they moved across the faster lanes, Yantif discovered an odd effect. When he looked over his shoulder to the right, faces in his immediate vicinity receded and fell away into the blur. When he looked back to his left, the faces surged up from nowhere, drew abreast, and passed ahead into an equally anonymous beyond. The effect was disturbing, for reasons he could not precisely define. He began to feel vertigo, and turned away to face forward, to watch the blocks move past, each a different color, pinks and browns and yellows, greens of every description, moss, mottled green-white, cadaverous blue-green, black-green, faded reds, and orange-purples, all augmented to a state of clarity by the dawn light. Yantif became interested in the colors. Each, no doubt, exerted a symbolic influence upon those who lived with them. Peach, blotched with stump water, tan. Who chose these colors? What canons were involved? Lavender white, blue, acid green, on and on, each color no doubt dear to the folk who lived there. Tanzel tugged at his elbow. Yantif looked around to see Esteban, moving swiftly away to the right. Tanzel said somberly,
He just remembered an important engagement. He asked me to express his regrets to you.
Scorlet, her face flushed with annoyance, stepped smartly past.
Something I've got to do. I'll see you later.
She likewise was gone through the crowd, and Yantif was left with Tanzel. He looked at her in bewilderment. Where did they go so suddenly?
I don't know, but let's go on. I could ride Unsabal River forever.
I think we better go back. Do you know the way?
Of course. We just revert to Disselberg River, then cross to 112th Lateral.
You show me the way. I've had enough promenading for the day. Strange both Esteban and Scorlet decided to leave so suddenly.
I suppose so, said Tanzel, but I've come to expect strange things. Well, if you want to go back, we'll take the next turnaround.
As they rode, Yantif gave his attention to Tanzel, an appealing little creature, so he decided. He asked if she enjoyed her school. Tanzel shrugged.
I'd have to drudge otherwise, so I learn counting, reading, and ontology. Next year I'll be into personal dynamics, and that's more fun. We learn how to express ourselves and dramatize. Did you go to school?
Yes, indeed. 16 long years.
What did you learn?
An amazing variety of facts and topics.
And then you went out to drudge?
No, not yet. I haven't found anything I really want to do.
I don't suppose you live at all egoistically.
Not as you do here. Everyone works much harder, but most everyone enjoys his work.
But not you.
Yantif gave an embarrassed laugh. I'm willing to work very hard, but I don't quite know how. My sister Fairfan carves mooring posts. Perhaps I'll do something like that.
Tanzel nodded. Someday let's talk again. There's the creche. I'll turn off here. Your block is straight along. It's Old Pink, on the left. Goodbye.
Yantif proceeded along the manway and presently saw ahead that block which he now must consider home, Old Pink. He entered, ascended to level 19, and sauntered around the corridor to his apartment. He opened the door and tactfully called out, I'm home, it's Yantif. No response. The apartment was empty. Yantif entered and slid the door shut. He stood for a moment wondering what to do with himself. Still 2 hours until dinner. Another ration of gruff, deedle, and wobbly. Yantif grimaced. The globes of paper and wire caught his eye. He went to examine them. Their function was not at all clear. The paper was green, flimsy. The wire had been salvaged from another operation. Perhaps Scorlet intended to decorate her apartment with gay green bubbles. If so, thought Yantif, her achievement was remarkably slipshod. Well, so long as they pleased Scorlet, it was none of his affair. He looked into the bedroom to appraise the 2 cots and the not too adequate curtain. Yantif wondered what his mother would say. Certainly nothing congratulatory. Well, this was why he had come traveling, to explore other ways and other customs. Though for a fact, since matters were so casual, he would definitely have preferred the young woman, what was her name? Kadida? Whom he had noticed in the refectory. He decided to unpack his satchel and went to the wardrobe where he had left it. He looked down in consternation. The lock was broken. The lid was askew. Opening the case, Yantif examined the contents. His few clothes apparently had not been molested except for his spare shoes of fine grey lantile. These were missing, as well as his pigments and pad, his camera and recorder, and a dozen other small implements. Yantif went slowly into the sitting room and sank into a chair. A brief few minutes later, Scorlet entered the apartment. Yantif felt that she looked in a very bad mood, with her black eyes glittering and her mouth set in a hard line. Her voice cracked as she spoke.
How long have you been here?
5 or 10 minutes.
Kindergoff Lateral was down to the contractors, she said bitterly. I had to walk an entire mile.
While we were gone, someone broke into my case and stole most of my things. The news seemed to drive Scorlet close to the limits of self-control.
And what do you expect? She snapped in an unpleasantly harsh voice. This is an egoistic country. Why should you have more than anyone else?
I have been over-eagle-eyed, said Yantif dryly, to the effect that I now have less than anyone else.
They're problems you must learn to cope with,
said Scorlet, and marched into the bedroom. A few days later, Yantif wrote a letter to his family.
My dearest mother, father, and sisters, I am now established in what must be the most remarkable nation of the Alastor cluster, Erebus of Wyst. I inhabit a 2-room apartment in close contiguity to a handsome woman with strong views on egoism. She doesn't approve of me particularly. However, she is civil and on occasion helpful. Her name is Scorlet. You may wonder at this unconventional arrangement. It is really quite simple. Egoism refuses to recognize sexual differences. One person is considered equal to every other, in all respects. To emphasize sexual differences is called sexivation. For a girl to primp or show her figure to best advantage is sexivation, and is considered a serious offense. The apartments were originally intended to house male or female couples or mated couples, but the philosophy was denounced as sexivationist, and apartment assignments are now made at random, though often persons will trade about. Anyone coming to Erebus must leave his prejudices behind. Already I have learned that, no matter what the apartment similarities of a new place to one's home, the stranger must not be misled. Things are never what they seem. Think of this, and think of all the cluster worlds and all the Gaian reach, and the Erdic realms and the Primarchic. Think of these trillions of folk, each with his singular face. Frightening thought, really. Still, I am much impressed by Erebus. The system works. There is no desire for change. The Erebans seem happy and content, or at the very least passive. They place their highest value upon leisure, at the expense of personal possessions, good food, and a certain degree of freedom. They are far from well educated, and no one has
expertise in any specific field. Maintenance and repairs are done by whomever is assigned the job, or, in serious cases, to contracting firms from the Weird Lands. These are the provinces to north and south. They are not nations. I doubt if they have any formal government whatever, but I don't know much about them. I have not been able to do any serious work because my apparatus has been stolen. Scarlet considers this quite normal and cannot understand my distress. She jeers at my anti-eagleism. Well, so be it. As I say, the Erbins are a strange folk, who become excited only by food, not their usual wump, but good natural food. In fact, an acquaintance by the name of Esteban has mentioned one or two vices so odd and repellent as to be unspeakable, and I will say no more. The block where I live is known as Old Pink because of its hexamacious color. Each block, ostensibly identical to all others, is vividly distinctive, at least in the minds of the folk who live there, and they will characterize the blocks as dreary, frivolous, teeming with sly snurges, serves good wump, serves bad wump, too many pranksters, sex evasionist. Each block has its own legends, songs, and special jargon. Old Pink is considered easygoing and faintly raffish, which, of course, describes me very well, too. You ask what is a snurge? A thief. I have already suffered the attentions of a snurge. My camera is missing, so I can't send photographs. Luckily, I was carrying my ozzles with me. Please, send me by return mail new pigments, vehicle, applicators, and a big pad of matrix. Fairfan will tell you what I need. Send them insured. If they come by ordinary delivery, they might be eagle-eyed. Later, I have done with my first stint of drudge as an export factory, which I worked for as what is called a driver. 10 tokens for each hour worked. My weekly drivet is 130 tokens, of which 82 must immediately be paid to the block for food and lodging. The remainder is not too useful since there's not much to buy. Garments, shoes, stadium tickets, toasted seaweed at Disjerferkracht. I now dress like an Arabin, so as not to be conspicuous. Certain shops at the spaceports sell imported goods, tools, toys, occasional trifles of Bonter, the most astonishing prices, in tokens, of course, which have almost no exchange value against the Ozel, something like 500 tokens to the Ozel. Absurd, of course. On second thought, not so absurd. Who wants tokens? There's nothing to buy. Still, this way of life, peculiar as it seems, is not necessarily a bad system. I suspect that every style of life works out to be a trade-off between various kinds of freedoms. There are naturally many different freedoms, and sometimes one freedom implies the absence of another. In any event, I've been getting ideas for depictions which I know you don't take seriously. The light here is absolutely ravishing, a deceptively pale light which seems to diffract everywhere into colored fringes. I have much more to tell you, but I'll reserve something for my next. I won't ask you to send in Bonter. I'd be, well, to tell the truth, I don't know what would happen, but I don't want to learn. Immigrants and visitors are not well liked, yet I find that my fame as a fixer has already spread far and wide. Isn't this a joke? I know only what we were taught at school and what I learned at home. Still, everyone who has a bad screen insists that I fix it for him. Sometimes, utter strangers. And when I do these favors, do they thank me? Verbally, yes. But there's a most peculiar expression on their faces. I can't describe it. Contempt, distaste, antipathy. Because I so easily command this to them, recondite skill, I have on this instant come to a decision. No longer will I perform favors free. I'll demand tokens or hours of drudge. They will sneer and make remarks, but they will respect me more. Here are some of my ideas for depictions. The blocks of Unsibal in the colors which hold so much meaning
for the Arabians. The view along Unsibal River from a prospect deck, with the oncoming sea of faces all blank and serene. The games, the shunk battles, the Araban version of Husad. Disjerferact, a carnival along the mud flats. More of this later. Just a word or two about the local version of Husad, and I hope no one in the family will be shocked or dismayed. The game is played to standard rules. The defeated Shirl, however, must undergo a most distressing experience. She is disrobed and placed upon a cart with a repulsive wooden effigy which is so controlled as to commit an unnatural act upon Shirl. Meanwhile, the losing team must pull this cart around the stadium. The wonder never leaves me. How are shields recruited? Each must realize that sooner or later her team must lose, yet none ever seem to consider this contingency. They are either very brave or very foolish, or perhaps they are impelled by some dark human inclination which rejoices at public degradation. Well, enough on this subject. I think I mentioned that my camera had been stolen, hence no photographs. In fact, I'm not sure that there's any agency at Unsibal to make prints from my matrix. I will report further in my next letter. From your loving Yantif.